Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. On January 17, 1991, Operation Desert Storm commenced, and the Gulf War began. Even though the war was being fought halfway around the world over 7,000 miles away, the war had massive implications on the biggest television and the biggest sporting event of the year in the United States, with that being the Super Bowl. Just about every plan for the big game taking place on January 27th was thrown out the window. Companies that scheduled commercials had to call a last-minute audible and change their entire ad, with some, like Pepsi, even canceling their giant ad campaign entirely. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Security was greatly enhanced, with significantly more checkpoints to get into the venue, to the point where it took some fans hours just to get inside the stadium. Coverage of the game looked entirely different, with live reports on what was taking place in the Middle East during the pregame show, during the game itself, and even in place of the halftime show. And what you might not realize is that this actually impacted the action itself on the field. Seriously. Because of the changes that had to be implemented for Super Bowl XXV, the field conditions were, at least initially, absolutely terrible. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot that you probably know about Super Bowl XXV. You know about Whitney Houston's national anthem. You know about Bill Belichick's masterful game plan as the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants to stop Buffalo's vaunted offense, in what is widely considered to be one of the greatest coaching strategies of all time. You know about Scott Norwood's missed field goal. But you probably don't know about this. Because what if I said that the day of the game, literally hours before the game was set to kick off, that they had to resod the field, partly due to what was taking place in the Middle East? Seriously, the day of the game, and there were parts of the field that were completely bare. Well, this is the story behind the bizarre controversy at Super Bowl XXV that you probably don't know about. Before I talk about the actual controversy in question regarding the field, we need some context to understand the halftime show, what the original plan was, and what ended up happening as a result of Operation Desert Storm. Now, if you were watching the game on television like over 80 million Americans were, you didn't see the halftime show live. You either never saw it, or you saw it after the game. Instead, you saw what you've been watching this whole time, which was a live news report from Peter Jennings about Operation Desert Storm. To date, this marks the first and only time that the halftime show was not shown live, and alternative programming was shown by the network broadcasting the game. However, if you were at the stadium, or you did decide to stick around after the game to watch the halftime show and see what you missed, oh my, were you treated to an absolute disaster of a show. Disney was producing the Super Bowl XXV halftime show, and just like about every single Disney halftime show, this one absolutely stunk. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this might be the worst halftime show in Super Bowl history. And trust me, I've seen just about every single one of them. Why New Kids on the Block is only there for 90 seconds makes no sense. Why couldn't you just let them do the entire show? Warren Moon makes a cameo for some reason. The choreography is terrible. They're all out of sync. The lyrics to the songs themselves make no sense. The show just stops midway through for a message from President Bush. You have a 6-year-old kid singing Wind Beneath My Wings without hitting a single note. Heck, they play It's a Small World not once, not twice, but 3 times during the show. 3 separate times.
It's a small world after all.
No, anything but that.
Why didn't Disney just take Zazu's advice? However, I'm getting off track here. The point is that this halftime show was a salute to the military and a salute to the United States. Now, I'm fairly confident based on interviews and whatnot that this was not the original plan. They just threw that hastily together in the middle of the show, because while the first third of the show was planned from the start, and the final third was planned, the middle third was added on. And I bring this up because I want you to watch these camera shots right here. You've got a bunch of kids holding up American flags and waving them around. In theory, this is fine. In theory, there's nothing wrong with this. Again, the show was themed toward America, and everyone had American flags waving around during the show. However, watch what happens at the start of the show before the American flag segment. You see a bunch of kids bringing these flags onto the field, rolled up because the flag can't touch the ground, and then placing these sticks on the ground while they do their choreographed routine that was planned from the start before they had to call the last-minute audible in the middle third. Again, when you look at this, nothing seems wrong with it. But let's think about this for a second. How old are the dancers in here? They're super young. None of them are older than 13, and even that's pushing it. These kids didn't just learn this routine on the fly. They had long rehearsals, often working until 10 o'clock at night the week of the game, despite having school earlier in the day. Said Chris LaFont, who was one of the young football player dancers on the 4-hour rehearsals, "It's usually fun the first hour of practice. Then it gets boring." So let's put some pieces of this puzzle together. You've got a bunch of young boys who are bored during these rehearsals right here, who are tired after long days, and who are practicing with sticks. What are they going to do with the sticks? Which may remind you, are sticks that they would not have had if it was not for Operation Desert Storm. You guessed it, they're going to poke holes in the ground. Lots and lots of holes. Heck, sometimes the kids even fought each other with the sticks, engaging in acts of sword fighting. The main choreographer of the show, Doug Jack, had to routinely tell the kids not to poke the tip of the flag into the ground. But boys will be boys. You give a boy a pointy object? Of course they're going to make a hole with it, especially when they're bored out of their mind after 4 hours of rehearsal every day for a week. And seeing as all of the rehearsals took place at the stadium on the field where the game was going to be played, this meant that, you guessed it, the field was going to be beaten up. How no one at Disney or the NFL saw this coming, I have no clue. But it meant that leading up to the game, the field was an absolute mess. Enter this man right here. This is George Toma, otherwise known as the Sod Father. He's been the groundskeeper at every single Super Bowl thus far, although he will not be for Super Bowl 58 due to his feud with the NFL about how bad the field was at Super Bowl 57 and how the NFL wouldn't let him do what he needed to do in order to make the field not resemble a slip and slide. Toma was going to paint the Super Bowl 25 logo at midfield the night before the game. However, there was one small problem. As Thomas said, it was bare dirt. Bare dirt. I couldn't paint the logo there because it was painting dirt, and nothing would be left. He then added, there were a lot of bruise marks on it. I just wasn't satisfied. Again, shocker, when you have a bunch of young boys on the field and give them sharp, pointy objects, you're not going to have any grass left where they're standing. At this point, it seemed like Toma was screwed. He had two options. Deal with it the way that it was, just have the field be a giant patch of dirt, and cross your fingers that this wouldn't impact the game itself, or resod the field. The risk and reward for resodding the field is tremendous. On one hand, if you resod the field and can successfully pull it off, the field will become immaculate. The field will become significantly more playable, and you'll receive a ton more compliments for your work. On the other hand, if you can't pull this off, you're not going to have a field for this game. And not even 24 hours before the game, George Toma had to find a way to find 1,000 square feet of sod. How was that even going to be possible? But Toma, whether he was super naive or super optimistic, knew there was going to be a way to do it. There just had to be. With that, he called his crew and told them to remove 1,000 square feet of soil, removing it 3 inches deep. In case you couldn't tell, that is an absolute crap ton of soil you're removing. But Toma had a plan. Turns out, Toma knew the groundskeeper at the University of Tampa, about 4 miles from where the Super Bowl was being played. The grand plan? Steal the sod from the soccer field there. Steal 1,000 square feet of sod from the soccer field, cut it up into squares, and place it at midfield so that the logo could be painted, and the field could be in better condition than how the kids at the halftime show left it. The only problem? Even though Toma knew the groundskeeper, the gates were locked. When they got there, the gates to the soccer field were completely blocked off. Time was of the essence. But remember, Toma and the crew had already removed 1,000 square feet of soil. They were already past the point of no return. They had to get this sod from the soccer field, however possible. So Toma, who was hired by the NFL to be the groundskeeper, was now playing the role of a robber. Toma said when he found out that the field was locked, "I know it's locked. Crash it. Go right in there. Break it open." And with that, they broke into the University of Tampa soccer field, not just crashing their gate, but destroying their field in the process, to the point where it looked like this. Yes, we have actual photos of what the soccer field looked like, and they destroyed it pretty good, without getting any permission whatsoever to do so. But whatever it took to get the field in pristine condition for the Super Bowl, Toma and his crew were going to do. No questions asked, no matter how illegal it may have been. As Toma said, "I should have been jailed." And yes, the NFL gave the University of Tampa a nice donation afterwards, and repaid them for the break-in, and then some. So at least the school got some compensation for Toma leading this late-night heist. Side note, I love how one writer said that the university donated the sod on short notice. That is an extremely loose definition of the word donated. That's like saying if a robber breaks into my place and steals all my helmets in my office, then I donated the helmets to him. Like, no, I didn't. You stole them from me. You crashed my place and just took what you wanted, pillaging my place. I didn't donate them to you. You straight up took them from me. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But that raises the ultimate question. Did this grand plan of Toma's work? The answer was a resounding yes. There were no complaints about the field. Even before the game, ABC sideline reporter Lynn Swan commented on how the field, despite significant questions about it before, seeing as the field was not even a field less than a day before the game, was in good condition, and was good to go for this game. And Tampa Stadium manager Rick Naif echoed those thoughts, saying, "The footing held, and the field looked great." In the end, everything somehow worked out. The sod steal paid off. Super Bowl 25 between these two teams behind me right here was the last time ever that the Super Bowl was held at Tampa Stadium, before it got demolished later in the decade. And man, what a memorable Super Bowl it was in more ways than one. Of course, you had the game itself, which might have been the best Super Bowl ever played up until that point. But you also had other things like Whitney Houston's national anthem, the backdrop of the Gulf War, and the grand heist for sod led by George Toma. You can't deny this. The sod father knows his stuff. It's funny, because Toma was not even the slightest bit worried about the field entering the Super Bowl. In the week leading up to the game, he said, "Tampa's crew is like family to us. You can go back and check my position on this in what I've said before. In my book, I consider this the best playing surface in the NFL. The cake was already made before we got here. We're only here to put the icing on it." So much for that. I don't think he had the need to steal 1,000 square feet of sod, dig a hole 3 inches deep into midfield, and pull off an undercover heist less than 24 hours before the game on his bingo card. But it all worked out in the end. Because just to recap, the war 7,000 miles away causes an audible in the halftime show, meaning that young boys need flags, the boys are boys and fight with the sticks and poke holes in the ground, and the groundskeeper steals 1,000 square feet of sod to clean up the mess just hours before the game even starts. Talk about a super chain of events for the Super Bowl. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.